Welcome to another episode of Therapy JA. My name is Garnet Stephen Roper. I am the host. Once again, Therapy JA is a website that is dedicated to the advocacy of mental health, and it's a resource if you want to find therapists or any type of help you need. You can find it on the website. Our video series is breaking down the stigma of mental health, making it seem as a safe topic to discuss and a normalized conversation on mental health. And each week we interview different therapists, different psychologists, as well as counselors and mental health advocates to hear their opinions and takes on therapy and mental health in the Caribbean. And so today I have someone I am a fan. She's never she's never met a fan before. Very much a fan of her work. I've known about her for she's good. I've been a fan of her work. I respect her work. I'm very honored to have you here, Dr. Morgan. Please, welcome to the interview. How are you doing?
Give thanks, Garnet. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. I'm not cringed out. Come on now. I'm not. It's not cringe.
All right, so please, if you could you introduce yourself to the audience and just tell us your story.
Okay, sure. Kai Andito Damali Morgan Campbell. That's my full name. I'm very proud of it. So I like to use my initials everywhere, right? But clinical psychologist, been operating in the Jamaican space since 2001, when I graduated with my doctoral degree in general clinical psychology, came home, and which I've always wanted to do. It was not a question for me. The day that I was done, I was home, and I worked at the University of the West Indies and the University Hospital of the West Indies as a lecturer and a consultant for the next 15 years, while I was also building other alliances, I would say, or other initiatives through the Jamaican Psychological Society, where when I became a part of that society in 2003 and worked with them as a member first, and then from back and forth, vice president, president, all these different roles, etc. And I still sit there today as the immediate past president. So my commitment to the growth of psychology in Jamaica and the Caribbean has been central to my focus and central to my work. So I do a lot of work with children that we've been calling them a whole lot more youth with a promise. So a lot of my work encompasses youth with a promise. The previous term, which a lot more people are familiar with, maybe at risk, right? Anything Caribbean psychology, how do we understand the psychology of the Caribbean and the nuances that are going to make it different from the Eurocentric view of psychology which is the way that we all learned, right? So putting that cultural piece into psychology is also an important piece of my work, and my work in also in sexuality, right? So whether that's LGBTQ plus work with that community, or work generally with vulnerable populations is also a big deal for me. I work quite a bit with the blind and with the deaf communities, and so those areas are big areas for me in which I kind of channel my focus. So I think assessments, we have a practice. We run a practice of which I am the chief executive psychologist, and Mr. Viral Billet is the clinical director. That's KAD Morgan and Associates. And then we also started a nonprofit organization this year, Kade Journey, which is focused on creating a trauma-informed Caribbean society, right? So our societies in general. So that piece, I have a lot of little niche areas, but that piece is right here to me.
What's a trauma-informed society? What does that mean?
Right. So trauma-informed means that at every level of the society, this is not just for mental health professionals. This is for workers in all parents, staff members, students, babies, everybody. It is understanding how much trauma impacts us, or how trauma impacts us at whichever level. And as a result, how we relate to people comes from that kind of focus, like understanding that it is more likely that somebody has experienced trauma than not, means that when you approach them, when you're talking to them, when you're dealing with them at the cashier stand, when you're dealing with your road rage on on the when you're on the road, when you're dealing with whoever you're dealing with, if you start from the focus that wait, you know what, trauma might be impacting this individual. I wonder what happened to them. I wonder who was there to support them. That makes your approach interpersonally very different. So that's a big goal for us. Like we need to be dealing with each other. There's this little meme that just says, be kind. You don't know what people are going through, right? So
Yeah.
it kind of takes those words, that meme is essentially a trauma-informed approach.
Okay. So if Sonny, you bring that up in terms of be kind, there is do you think there's a healthy stigma of that in terms of kindness in Jamaica? Do you think we have a stigma of, because some people may view that as being weak, and especially for men. So my focus will always be kind of more on men in terms of, because I feel like men view mental health as, there's a very huge misconception, and I feel like, okay, like I wanted to ask you in terms of patients, is it mostly women or mostly men that come to you?
It has been evening out a whole lot. It used
Mm.
to back in the early 2000s, even up to maybe the later that first decade of that century, the 21st century. They it was skewed, but it's not skewed anymore. I've actually forgotten because we've put it in our practice. We've looked at our numbers, and the gender skew is not that big. We have quite a number of men in here.
Okay, good.
There's a growth in that area. There's a growth in that area for sure, but there is
Mhm.
definitely what you're talking about, that kind of stigma and that kind of the mental health, the issue of weak, you know, for men is also a big piece. It's a huge piece, right? That man box is what I term it. I've heard that term before and I've forgotten who the person is, but man box, that box this is what you do as a man. You sit in this box. And if you don't even put your pinky toe out, because you put your pinky toe out, then you're weak, you're sissy, you're this, you're that, whatever, all the different terms that the man can get. So yes, I think you are correct, because again, we have to also, even in terms of my practice, we have to be careful about how we look at that and extrapolate or generalize, simply because any practice is going to be people that are can afford to pay. Most of the persons in the practice are going to be able to afford to pay. That's not the majority of our society, right? So our society, there's a whole lot of people out there that are not in this sample, you know? And so from a larger perspective and a more general perspective, I definitely think that this is an issue. It's an issue for women too, because for our women, right? Because as you know, I mean, we see a lot of jokes about it sometimes, but our Jamaican women don't easy, right? And they're aggressive,
Yeah.
right? As well. So getting things done the aggressive way is something that we have has probably been very adaptive for us. And that's the reality. It has been adaptive for us. We needed to do it to survive at a particular point, right? And we're hoping now to evolve. And that's part of understanding how we work with the psychology of evolution, is that we begin to understand the things that we used to do for adaptive purposes and survival purposes that we no longer need to do because they don't serve us, but because they're built in to our DNA. They're built into the way that we inherently function. We
Yeah.
continue to do them, not realizing. And actually, I would throw in trauma again right here because that's what trauma does. So we are reacting from a trauma-based perspective, right? And I'm talking thousands and how many years ago, right? And those were adaptive. We needed to do those things. We needed to be that way to survive. We needed to be, hard and all of that. But we have evolved. But it's a slower evolution for the psychological process. So, that's a part of the work that we have to.
So, okay, cause you mentioned about like price, and I wanted to ask that, what do you recommend for someone that can't afford therapy? Because the average therapy session is what, like 8 to 10,000 more.
Sure, or more.
Yeah, so like for the person that can't afford it, what resources do they have? What outlets are for them?
Yeah, that's an important question, which I do not have the full answer to, but it's something that we are working on, you know? So I would say, first of all, this is what I always say, like even at our practice now, we do a lot of stratification, right? So what I mean by that is that if you come in, we actually have a whole thriving practice that has master's practicum students, that has early career, people that maybe just graduated. And then we have more junior people that have been in the business maybe a few years. And then we have people that have been in the business for many years and so on. So we have that stratification, and the cost is actually dependent on who you're going to see. So from the get-go, you get the information that, listen, we have a practicum student and who is supervised by me, right? By myself, either myself or Mr. Billett, right? And so this person is going to be supervised, and this person's rate is $3,000.
Hey.
Right? So therefore, are you okay with that? Knowing that, they're a student, but they're going to be supervised, right? And people will, and some people will take that.
Yeah. $3,000, yeah.
Some people take that. So we have our practicum students get to see their clients, earn their stripes, get their experience while they're being supervised, and the persons get a lower cost of therapy. So we have a few people in now because we have practicum students now, and some practices are like that. So ask.
Practicum, those are what, UWI? Those are UWI-based students? I've never heard of practicum.
Some are. We have UWI. We actually have a practicum student from Cave Hill who's doing his master's at UWI in Cave Hill. We have a practicum student from UWI here in Kingston, in Mona. We have a practicum student who is studying in Canada, and she's here for a couple years and doing things online at school. And so she's in our practice. And then those are our master's level practicum students that are doing therapy.
Wow, that's good to know. I didn't mean to cut you out. I just didn't know therapy houses out here offered that.
Yeah, so our practice is built in that way. But also another thing with practices is that, and psychologists in general, is that we do pro bono work, right? So there are people that come sometimes, and they'll come in and they'll be like, boy, we really strapped, or we really can't, and all of us, actually, we make sure that all of us, and there are about 15 of us in here, right? That all of us have at least one pro bono client. And even if that client is not pro bono, even if you're at a senior level, even if that client is not pro bono, that client is paying maybe $1,500. I have somebody paying $500 right now, right? So we at least, each of us at least has one person at that level. So we try, this is the way we try in our practice to try to make sure that we try to, we do our best, with trying to help those that don't have access, right? We may do that on a time basis as well, because it may be that the person is out of a job. So right now, so we'll do this for you until the next 3 months when you get a job, and then we can renegotiate the fees, or something like that. So we're flexible that way, in terms of helping people, and so I think also that you'll find probably a number of people are like that. Sometimes we don't ask, but you ask, is there any way I can get a little discount, maybe for a certain period of time, or maybe for, a few sessions, or something like that. We try, because the things that are out there that are actually for the public, they may be good services, but they take a long time. And so you may have one session now and your next session is in 2 months, right? And the way that this works, that's not ideal at all for the things that people come in for, and the issues that they have.
Do you see therapy as, because some people will say that, they want to they'll go to a therapist for a period of time to deal with that issue, and then that is it? Or do you think it's a continuous thing of where a person sees them twice a month, like perpetually? Like, how do you view it?
Right. We have, it really depends on what they're going through. It really depends on what's happening, because some people come because they're in a particular crisis, right? And they only want to kind of get some support while they're dealing with this crisis. And those people may come 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions, and then you find that they peter off and disappear, right? Then you have
Yeah.
those people come and they're really like, listen, I have a lot of work to do on myself, right? And I need to tackle this, and this, and these things are really tough things that they don't just disappear. So I need to work at it, you know? And then we have people that kind of bounce up and down, you know? So they come in and then they may disappear for a little bit and then they come back again, right? That kind of thing. So people are on all kinds of different schedules, if you will. Some are in once every 2 weeks, some are in every week, some are in once a month, some are in once every 3 months after a particular time period. It just depends on where you're at and how we, you know, so every all of that is very dependent on the individual and their own goals.
So can I ask you, like, do you think it the that there's a period, like a way to measure the growth of the client? Like, can you like say like, okay, this person has changed? You know what I mean? Because I think, boy, I do therapy. As I say, I'm advocate. I do therapy more most than that. You know, I say twice a month most of the times. But there is a level of emotional health I recognize in myself, not to brag, but when I'm in conflict, I can be like, yo, this person has not done the work. Like, you know what I mean? Like, when you're in conflict, you kind of say, this person are really open and honest with themselves about certain things. Like, emotionally, them not. You know, so is there a way that you can recognize the growth in it with your own clients? Do you see that or do you record that?
So there's both qualitative and quantitative ways, you know. So we do check-ins a lot of times in our work and in the course of therapy. You would be saying, okay, all right, let's check in. It could be something like depression, it could be anxiety, it could be absenteeism from work, it could be, you know, different measures and things that you decide on that you're going to be watching. And these things will signal growth, you know. So we can talk about it a lot of more often than not. We talk about that and we say, okay, you know, there are things that I may notice as your psychologist. And I'd say, you know, um, 6 months ago, you would not have gone and asked your boss for a raise, you know? And look at you, you're there negotiating for yourself. 6 months ago, you would not have been taking and creating your boundaries and realize that, you know what, Fridays from 5 to 7 is my time, and you know, that kind of thing. And so there are things that we always note qualitatively that bring it together, you know, that then bring together these signs of growth, which is why it's important that they establish their goals from the beginning, because then we can continue to track, you know, 3 months down the road. Remember, these were your goals. Let's look at them. Well, how you think you're reaching there? How you think how you think you're doing? Where are we at? What do we need to work on more? Which one you think have you fulfilled them all? You ready to terminate? You know, that kind of thing. So that's an important piece in the journey. Yeah.
Okay. I have a question. So, in terms of for like men, how do you think? What's the best way to cultivate? Like, how do you cultivate a safe space for men in the sessions? And I also like, I think, what do you think has caused? Would you blame the patriarchy as to why it's a lot more difficult for men to be open, or do you? Let me not even put you in a like. Do you think there's a negative stigma for men emotionally, especially Jamaican men?
Yes, for sure. I see it all over the world, but I see it here for sure too. You know, it comes out in different ways with the different nuances, right? It's definitely difficult, more difficult for men, but trust me, we have met some women that have a hard time as well opening up and being vulnerable, right? It's not as I find it may not be as skewed once again with the population that we see.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Practice.
What do you think is causing that? Why are women so why are some women being like so? Is it because of like, well, no, let me not. Why do you think? Yeah.
For me, it's the trauma piece, right? Because
Really?
usually, and the trauma piece, because that's what trauma does. So that's why I think we see a little bit more of a balance, if you will, with people that have a hard time opening up, because trauma does that to you, you know. So in other words, your experience of trauma makes you untrusting, right? Mistrustful, whatever the words are, right? That of other people, because where you were supposed to have that safe space, as you mentioned, right? You did not have it. And that safe space is supposed to be with the persons that you trust the most, whether this could have been at school or at home, whichever it is, or both, whatever. You didn't get that. And so, why would you even begin to trust somebody else? Right? When you have been failed and or neglected or abandoned or hurt or whatever it is by those that were supposed to, right? In your formative years, especially. So you come into the space, and as much as this is supposed to be a safe space, right? Your therapy room, your psychology, your counseling is supposed to be safe. You still have that embedded, in the brain chemistry, in the structure, all of that, it's embedded there. And this is what we're seeing more and more with the data on the neurological correlates, the brain correlates of trauma, right? So breaking down that piece and opening up and allowing people to let them in to be vulnerable through the process is one of the greatest challenges in dealing with people that have experienced trauma. Getting past that point so that you can really do the work is the greatest battle.
Especially when they feel that betrayal from somebody that's like an authority figure or someone they expected to keep that trust. When they feel that betrayal, it's very hard for them to trust the next person.
Exactly. Exactly. So it takes some time. So they have a hard time. And I would add for men, like we're talking about, the whole idea that being vulnerable is weak, So you're coming into a space to be vulnerable. Like, no, we don't do that. But I find men to be very emotional generally, right? And I just don't think that they express it the same way. But we must understand what emotional means. You have a breadth of emotions inside of you, a depth, that you may not be showing in a particular way. But I find that when a man decides he commits to the therapeutic process, right, that a number of them, when you decide you're coming to therapy, you know what it's about. Even if you have some misconstrued ideas, you have a general idea what this is about. He's already made the commitment to open himself in the space, right? Unless it's coming from like, oh, the wife, the partner, the sister, the mom, whoever is the one saying go, go, go. Then it takes a little bit more time to get through. But if he comes on his own, right, then he's kind of ready to open up into that space,
Yeah,
you
there's
know?
an expectation of him to be in a space
Yeah,
where he
and
can.
he knows that's there.
Yeah, yeah,
As much as it may be hard, at least there is that piece that says, you know what, I know what I'm coming here for.
yeah, yeah. Do
Yeah.
you do
And the
therapy?
very fact that you chose therapy, being a man in an environment that says, we don't really talk to people about our problems and we need to solve them ourselves, already tells you that he has a shift and there's a little bit of a something that's a little bit different about him in that reality.
Do you do therapy? Do you see a therapist?
If I what?
Do you see a therapist?
Oh yeah, I do. Absolutely. Absolutely recommend it for everybody, and I absolutely endorse it, and we need it.
Yeah.
We all need it, in my view.
No, man, I ask because I've met some counselors that are like them. They don't, I had a family member that was it, a very well-known counselor. He was a pastor though, and he would not do counseling because his thing was kind of like, boy, he's very well known. If him do the counseling, it'd have to be somebody international, kind of want people knowing business. And it was very shocking to me because I was like, yo, you yourself are a counselor, you know the importance of it. It's like a doctor would say, so me know the checkups. I don't want other doctors to know my business. So me a doctor, me can diagnose myself. You know what I mean? As I was like, wow.
The challenge, I think, I don't see the challenge like that because I can understand the challenge of being well known, as in the field. The challenge is the dual relationships. That has been my challenge. So it's not that I care if you know my business, right? But it's the fact that we are going to interact in several different spaces, which will make it a little bit like, because there will be crossover. So there's certain information that your psychologist knows about you, but then if you know, then what if your psychologist becomes your boss? How is that going to play out? And dual relationships is something that we talk a lot about in ethics, about managing and all of that, because it can cause certain disruption and ruption, right? That you can avoid. So having that duality is definitely something that's a little bit tricky, right? It's tricky in other ways. So I like to add that to the piece is the greatest challenge for me.
All right, what are your thoughts on like new age approaching for mental health in terms of like positive affirmations, those type of exercises? Do you believe that they make a difference in terms of, do you think they are very helpful in terms of
Not alone by themselves, right? I think that you have to go through a process. So let's start with, you mentioned positive affirmations. And what I've realized over the years about positive affirmations is that if you just get up every day and you say, okay, I am the best I can be, this day is going to be great, I'm da da da, without actually dealing with the reality of why you don't think that, yeah, what your cognitive distortions are, what your thought processes are, why you actually don't believe it and have to be telling yourself it, then it doesn't stick.
But how do you break that though? Cause that's a heavy. But my thing is, if you're told all your life that you're no good, you know what I mean, and them type of thing there, and then you say, you know what, no man, and you started the positive affirmations, but your subconscious has held on to these things that they was told from young. How are you going to break that? How are you going to beat that? How? You know what I mean?
Right. So CBT has a really good method for looking at that, and really what it is, it's a debate. Let me just, if I can simplify it, it's a debate that you're going to need to have with yourself, right? Because a lot of times these things are irrational, irrational thoughts. And so you may have, okay, so you have this experience, maybe you did do something wrong or incorrect or made a poor decision, and then somebody just started beating you up on it, about it, and, oh, you're not good, this, that, right? And then you grow up with this kind of ideology. Now you're trying to fight it, and you get up and you say, hold on, let me really take a deep dive into what it is that, is this true or is it not true? So you look at it and you say, okay, yeah, I did make that decision, did really, that one never make it, right? That was a poor decision and so on. But at the same time, I did make this good decision over here, right? Every decision I've made is not over here, is not crap, And so you begin this debating process, usually with the help of a psychologist or a therapist, but in a process, because it's a whole process. It doesn't disappear after one time, right? There are many things to kind of challenge and activities that you really should be doing to kind of enhance that, enhance it. But that's the part that I'm talking about that I think is really important before you jump from here to then start telling yourself, oh yeah, man, I'm really good at this. I am good at this. I'm good at decision making. I'm good at da 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 da. Right? When you don't really believe it, right? You don't really believe it, and so it's that belief that we have to work on. Why don't you believe it? Where that come from? Is that true? Is that not true? Is a part of it true? Is that kind of thing, and do that whole analysis to then get to the point now where you can really make a true statement, which may not sound like, yeah, man, med bomb everything, get everything. It may not sound like that. It may sound like, I am a work in progress. I have made some bad decisions in my life, but I have definitely made some really good ones, which have led to X, Y, and Z. So it's a more balanced statement, if you will, which you more believe, because you didn't believe that you were just all of that up here, and that's okay, so it's that process, so the newer age things have a lot of also mindfulness, right? Mindfulness is great, and mindfulness is very clear that we are doing something in the moment, which is the difference with a positive affirmation, you know what I mean? So we're doing something in the moment to kind of, so for example, I'm feeling really anxious in this moment, but I need to take this test, right? And this is not helping me right now because my mind is all over the place and I can't even remember what I studied for this test. And so there's a technique that may enable you to be like, okay, let me just ground myself and just breathe or whatever it is so that I can calm, put that to the side so I can take my test. You understand what I mean? You understand the difference? So that
Yeah.
there are a lot of the mindfulness techniques are about that, are about like, let me get myself together and calm, center myself in the moment, right? And they work very well for that reason. It's not a guarantee. It doesn't say in the long term you're gonna handle every situation perfectly down the road, but it says, okay, in this moment, I can calm myself and focus.
You believe? So, are you pro like mindfulness exercises and that type of stuff?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Like I work with a meditation company, so like it's very much pro mindfulness, and I'm like I like it, so I'm very much into it as well. But I think there are certain things like okay, meditation, taking that time to clear your mind, 1000%, yes, that helps. But I think there are certain other things. I agreed what you were saying about the trauma of one not completely rejecting it, like the stuff you've been told, but having a balanced approach to yes, I have made these mistakes, or yes, I did this wrong. However, I am now on that path. You know what I mean? So it's a lot more balanced approach. I think for like certain traumas that you go through, I think mindfulness is good, but there has to be a lot of other things you work on as well, not just
Absolutely. That in and of itself and that alone, right?
Yeah.
there's a thing where we say that meme that you talk about, you don't know what people are going through, be kind. People always say that, but from my experience, people in general will not be kind. People will be nice because, and I think nice is a defense mechanism. People will be nice to kind of like, oh, it's a protective thing, but it's not genuine. But most people will not be kind, and I feel like, so I don't want to, let me not do blanket statements, but I feel like instinctively, if someone is going through stuff, I feel like people instinctively will avoid that person. I feel like most people do not have the work. Because I'm somebody that grew up in church and I wanted to, but if you wait, I wanted to ask you about like church counseling because I feel like people think that going to church in terms of with dealing with mental health issues is cheaper. Okay, you don't have to pay no money, you go on pastor, you talk. But a lot of people in church have not done the work. A lot of people in church do not have the experience to really deal and take on mental health issues. And they think they can because, them are Christian and the Holy Spirit endow them, and really they're not. Them working within the flesh. I grew up in the church, like I've seen, I've seen so many people have pastorship and elders, but they really don't have any form of counseling training or any form of work in that aspect, and they lead to so much hurt with young people and young impressionable people because they did not do the work. Damn. The point I was making is, do you think in general that people really do believe that in terms of being kind? Do you think people really have that type of outlook? People say it, but do they do it in practice?
Yeah, and it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. So don't even it's not easy. It's not easy. And we need a whole heap of work to be able to be kind, right? I'm not kind all the time. I really am not, right? So I'm not out here also trying to kind of judge that, but we are all on a kind of journey. And to get to that, you're going to be unkind sometimes. Sometimes you're in your own stuff, and therefore you don't even remember to stop and be like, oh, wait, hold on. I wonder if, this person is going through something, why they're behaving like that, and I'm here taking it so personal, right? So we have to recognize that it's like a path, but one step at a time, because you're right. People are not always kind at all, which is why I think that meme came up because, just let's try, let's figure out the space. Let's try to.
All right, I want to do a quick thing called Ask a Therapist. So
Okay.
I'll give you like three situations that I'm reading online, and you can give me your input as a therapist as to what you think the person should do. That's fair, right?
Sure, sure.
All right, hold on. Ah, here it is. So we'll do this one. Okay, so ready. I am a 25-year-old woman and I do nursing. I enjoy my work. I have been taking care of an old man. He's a bit miserable, but they pay me well. Since I have been in the US, I met and fell in love with the man I am taking care of. From the time I started to work with him, he told me how much he loves me and will do anything for me. But I was warned to be very careful and not to become friendly with any of these men I am working with. I am his caregiver. This man is healthy and strong. He always wants me to hug him. I know how far I go with him. Since I have been in the US, I met my husband, so I'm now married. I told my husband how fresh this man I care for can be, and he told me that I should leave the job. But I cannot afford to leave the job, because all this man does is chat about how nice I look, but he has never tried to assault me. My husband has been living off me. I have not got anything out of this marriage. My marriage is not going anywhere, and I believe I will have to divorce my husband. While I'm away at work, this man is fooling around other women and even taking them to our house, and I am the one paying the rent. What should I do?
That sounds like a very difficult thing to answer in one step, but I'll tell you, if the person was in front of me, that's what you want me to do, right? Like, okay, so if this person was in front of me, I would say to her, first of all, let us look very carefully, right? And you talk to me about the pros and the cons of each of these situations, right? So let's talk about your marriage. Let's talk about the strengths and the takeaways and all these different things. And let's really dig into what the marriage is bringing to the table and all of that. Let's look at the fact that, you know, how long you've been together. Let's look at the different phases that these relationships can go through. And then let's look at what it is that this relationship with this the man that you're caregiving, you know, is also giving to you, because it's giving something that makes you feel like, okay, you know, maybe I should. And what are all of those things? So a number of things come up there for her, you know, in terms of her needs. And then this man comes and he is complimenting her all the time. And the marriage is having some little, you know, shaky moments and so on. And they're not even in the same country together. And she's working somewhere else. So there are things that maybe in this situation right now, you don't want to make a quick decision. You don't want to make like a flip, you know, look at it and say, boy, you know, this man over here is complimenting me all the time and I'm getting well paid over here. Oh yeah, this is the thing, right? Grass always looking greener on the other side. So we really would have to dig into, I think, the two scenarios and what's really happening, what is coming from her, just like a need in this particular phase, you know, of her life, and what's happening and what is real, what is genuine, what is, you know. So that's kind of where I'd go with that.
And I think a lot of times men, especially older men, this older guy was telling me this, because him say, you know, like at a certain age, men that like go after young women like that, is that it leads to ruin. Like it will like ruin your name, because him said them woman that can't go on take care of you in your big old age. You know what I mean? They may like the attention and they may like the money, but a lot of the times the man it's a mutual exploitative relationship. In that the man is using her for the validation, to feel wanted, to feel needed, and she is using the man for, you know, for the financial taking care of, and also for that validation.
Validation, that's her validation too, you know, and all these compliments and getting paid well and all of that. So it's transactional, but so is every relationship. That's the truth. That's why she has to kind of look at, okay, let me look at me and hubby, right, and see what is the nature of those transactions and how do they play out, and to both our benefit, our mutual benefit. And let's look at this one, and let's just look at it from a reality perspective, right? Because if you're going to make that decision that, all right, yes, I know, I can see that. He might give me some compliments and he might give me enough money, and I'm giving him some validation at his old stage in my life, in his life and all of that. And I can work with that then, you know, but we have to just really dig into the real story, you know, the facts.
Yeah. How often are relationships like, is money an issue in relationships that you've seen as a therapist?
That's a big one. It's a big one. It's a very big one. So what she speaks of there is not unusual. And there are many scenarios that can come. The scenario that she spoke of there, you know, okay, husband not give her no money and she not getting anything, and what she gets out of this marriage, okay, that's one story. Another story is, I'm getting all the money and more, but I don't have the emotional attention, validation, presence of the person. You know, I am getting this money, but then but then other needs are not being satisfied. So there's different permutations and combinations in which finances come into a relationship, but they're undoubtedly an important piece. As a matter of fact, I remember reading a piece of literature once, and I think it stands now, that financial issues are the things that couples, I think it said that couples argue most about.
100%. And so the thing, so I think a lot of guys will think that, like a lot of men will kind of have this, because of social media, has this perception that girl only want money, man. Girl only want man where or thing up in life. But sometimes you hear from women that money is not really a thing. What they care about is more about how much they like the guy and attracted to the guy. But how what's I say? Where's the intermediary where some is true? Where's the intermediary of truth in that? In those like stereotypes that you would say, like that you would say as
I think both males and females, money is important, right? And I think that if a female says that, money is not important, or I think they don't understand. I think what they're trying to say is not important is that the man doesn't have to give me money for everything. That's different. But the money, the fact that the money is coming or not coming, or coming in between, or coming a little bit, or coming too much, is an issue in the relationship. And it can take place because money is actually a secondary reinforcer, as we call it. There's something underneath there that the money provides, that a need for people. So whether that is that, okay, you're in this relationship now, like this lady says, for how many years? And then, maybe you had dreams and you thought that, oh boy, I would have loved to go to go to Dubai or wherever, right? And then now you realize that 5 years into your marriage, 7 years into your marriage, your relationship, it not happen. Or it might be that you had this dream that you would have this big house, or a more comfortable house, or that you would be buying a house, not renting one, or that you would be, so many different things that it also can become an issue that the man himself feels like he is not doing what he is expected to do, from his perspective. And so he becomes disgruntled about it or depressed about it, which impacts the relationship. So in many ways and forms, it impacts the relationship. So I think that for anybody that says that, I think it's like, okay, hold on, pause. Not saying that, you want the money so you can go, get your hair done every week and get your nails done every week and all of that. But money is going to be a factor in your relationship. However you want to slice it, it's going to be a factor.
I remember one time I was dating this girl. I was earning exponentially more than me. She was really well off in her career, and she really liked me. And I said it as listen, like I know you like me, but I said, look, I don't feel like I have my shit together. And so I was like, I'm not earning. It's not like I have no problem dating someone that earns more than me, but it was the levels, because I earn Jamaican money and she earn US money. You know what I mean? And I was just like, I know you want us to date, but I'm like, I need to get my shit together. And she was like, no, it's fine. And then there were the situations where she was like, she wanted to go to a certain restaurant that I just could not afford. Like the average entree was 300 US. And I say, yo, I can't go here, some man. And she said, she'll get upset. And it was a certain point that the resentment started to build. And then they would just say, we might as well just end it. Because
it doesn't make any sense, right?
It don't make no sense.
Even in that scenario, as much as, okay, so maybe she would have been happy to pay for that meal, sure, in that particular restaurant. But your ideals as well and your thoughts play a role in how it all going to go together. So it's something that, and it's not something that they can't get around, or you can't get around, but it takes like open communication and being clear that yes, it is an issue, right? And so how we're going to get around this, and whether that agreement would have been, you know what, we can't go at this restaurant, level B or wherever, instead. And then when we get myself together, we make sure we're going to forward that one there that we never get to go to this time, because that's where I am at or how I feel comfortable. So it takes a lot of communication, but to ignore it and feel like, oh no, man, that not gonna cause no issue. It's good. I got this, that kind of thing. It really does not. You can't do that. That will sneak up on you and cause
Absolutely. All right,
problems.
let me give you one more. So, I am a 30-year-old Christian and I am having problems that I don't know how to deal with. I got married 2 years ago to a young woman who is from our denomination, but we didn't fellowship in the same congregation. She's 34 and has one daughter. When we became friends, we used to fool around a lot in bed. She always wanted me to have sex with her, and when we got engaged, she became possessive. We did not live together until we were married. I was living at my father's house. My mother did not marry my father. I preferred to live with my father. He supported me and he bought me a car for my 21st birthday. When I was attending university, I did not have to take a student loan. My father did that for me. When it came to my education, he was very rough. I love my parents, but I love my father more. My father accused my mother of cheating on him with his best friend. I knew it was true because I had evidence. When my father asked me certain questions about the man and my mother, I was scared to tell him the truth. I believed he would beat up my mother. So I told him that I didn't know anything. But to this day, my mother believes that I told my father that this man used to come to the house when he was not there. I never saw my mother in bed with this man, but I knew she was having sex with him one night because I could hear them. Ugh. She was telling him how sweet he was, and it seemed as if both of them would have to do something to see each other more often. I pretended that I had to clear my throat to let my mother know that I was home. As soon as I did that, the ramping in the bedroom stopped. I was 15 at the time. When I first told my father that I wanted to live with him at his house, he told me to pack everything and he would pick me up. I told my mother I was going to live with my father and she said that was okay with her. She would rent my room or take in a boarder. My father was living with a woman. He told me that I should call the woman auntie, but the woman told me to call her by her first name. When I met my wife, she told me that she knew my mother as they were from the same district. But her mother told her that my mother was always a hot girl. Well, my wife is just like my mother. I know for sure that she's keeping another man with me, although she's in the church and teaching Sunday school. I cannot take her cheating anymore. I told her that she should leave, but she said that she has no reason to leave. How can a woman be married and put another man who is not a relative in her account? Well, that is what my wife did, and she named him as her friend. Would you not consider this very strange? I am an honest man. I don't spend my wife's money. My child's father is her child's father is supporting her. I don't need my wife's money. I've had to separate myself from the matrimonial bed. My father is encouraging me to divorce my wife. What do you say?
Hmm. Wow, that's very interesting, right? Very interesting story. So definitely I think that, he really has to kind of think through, and he's beginning to touch on some of the things that he has to think through, because he's looking at the messaging that he has got from he was younger, what happened in his parents' relationship, and how he has found himself in a very similar situation. So, for those that want to dig, that's a place to be digging at. How am I in this same scenario again? Or again in another, with the me being my father kind of thing. And but right now, to the point of his relationship, he clearly, I think, first and foremost, when we look at infidelity, he has to look at and think about what is going on here, in our relationship. The first and the foremost, a lot of times, and understandably so, when infidelity comes into the picture, the first thing we're thinking about is the other people, right? Meaning the other person, the outside person, and your partner, right? And so you're thinking about also then, okay, but what about our relationship as well, right? That does come into a lot of people's thoughts, because they're, like, am I not good enough? Am I not? And these kind of questions can come up, but in a very real and open way, without blaming self, because it's not about blaming yourself, but about kind of thinking about, okay, what has possibly gone wrong here? What needs are we not fulfilling in each other? What is happening here? And really look at the situation. Is it that? Is it a case where, because it's also possible that you are in a situation where you're in this relationship and everything is actually going well, but the person is still cheating, right? Is it that? Right? So am I dealing with a situation then where this individual has has some issues around sex, has some difficulty with monogamy, right? Or, is not naturally monogamous, or not easily, not naturally is the wrong word, but not easily monogamous, right? What is really going on here, And at that point, when you understand that, you understand more clearly how you can, or what decision you have to make. Do I have to get a divorce? Or is this something that I want to work on, that she wants to work on? If we identify that there is something, so all of those questions come after, but understanding what are we dealing here with this landscape, before we then kind of delve into, what do we do next?
Do you if there's cheating involved, do you recommend like repairing the relationship, or do you kind of recommend walking away?
I recommend really looking at the relationship. I would say that in a number of cases it can be repaired. If the person, especially if the person that has been hurt, right, or cheated on, is willing to look at all the places and all the vulnerabilities and the issues that exist, right? Because it's a dynamic. And we find sometimes that there are a lot of patterns that play out. Infidelity is something that is it's a very complex thing to look at. And it is not always, a lot of times we have certain ways that we take on when somebody has been unfaithful. And that includes like, what you call it now, like black and white thinking, like they're a bad person, right? So I'll give you one example, which I've seen in a number of occasions in my office, of a relationship that is doing well, right? Long-standing relationship, right? So upwards of 10 years, right? In some cases, 20. Things are good. The person they treat each other well, right? Etc. There is a stable family, let's put it that way, right? Stable relationship. And then there's an incidence of infidelity. And so a lot of the work, and we have a tendency that, once that happens, it's like, oh my God, this person is the worst. How can you do that? Who does that? That kind of thing, etc. But then sometimes you have to take a stock. And I hear and I feel these individuals taking a stock of the relationship, because they're like, wow, but she's such a great support for me. She's such a good mom. She is really a great, there are a lot of benefits that the person brings to the relationship also. And yes, there's also the infidelity, which has been awful. So they want to make the relationship work, because when they recognize and they really max it out, this person is bringing a lot more than this infidelity that happened. You understand? So that's what I mean, like by looking at the scenario. So in a number of those cases, I've seen them go on and the relationship works just great. Now, if you have a scenario where everything, every week, every 6 months, and going over and over and over, and we're just not getting to the then problems, that's much harder to repair. But I've definitely seen when there's been an infidelity and the person is not, and you can recognize this is a good person, but this person made an egregious, exactly, a lapse and all of that. Different story. And I've seen those repair much more easily and, than otherwise.
All right. So the question I have is also this: when is it that a person should trust their intuition that something is up? When is it that is your intuition, insecurity where you're projecting, and a risk of being gaslighting? When would you recommend that? Because I've had situations where
that's a tough one, Garnet. It's tough.
I've had situations where I'm like, I know there's something up. And even when I talk to women, I think a lot of times I don't believe in women intuition. So because a woman will be like, yeah man, I can't tell him I cheat. But I feel like what happens is, especially when you're attracted to someone, the warning signs that the red flags, you have on rose-colored glasses. So all red flags are pink. All red flags just, you have on rose-colored glasses. So it's not red flags, it's just flags. So I think a lot of times our intuition, when it's attraction or when we like them, it's not there. But what happens when you're like, I feel it, I feel like something is up, something is off? Is like, do you fix that in communication? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, when is it right and when is it just insecurity projection that happens?
Well, that comes with everything you said there. Knowing that distinction comes with knowing yourself, right? Because then you have to be very aware of your own insecurities, right? And then be able to make that distinction between, okay, you know what, this is me, just bring up the things that happened, a few years ago, or a relationship or 2 relationships ago, or whatever it might be, or my upbringing or my family, but I really feel like you watch a series of things. I don't think in any of those people that I've seen that say, I know that something is happening, something is off, they have several different things that they have pulled together, in terms of observations. It's not one thing, it's not 2 things. And I think that is what you need to back your intuition. Right? To back your intuition, you need to have some things that look solid enough for you to be like, yeah, something is not right here. There is phone keep. What are some of the common ones? The phone, right? The phone is a little bit being a change in behaviors, right?
Yeah.
So the phone is becoming too protective of the phone now. Turning it down, gone with it everywhere, even in the bath, and and these kind of things. Certain pockets of missing in terms of physically, missing physically when usually the person is like this. And usually it's the change in behavior. So whatever the change in behavior kind of brings, you have several little things that are like, no, I don't like how this is looking, that back your initial intuition. Because the intuition might come up with one thing, with one little incident. One little thing happened, either something was said or the way that they responded, or one of these little things, and it comes up, but it's observing that and watching that, watching to see the other things that may or may not play out, And usually, people ask questions. So like even some of the scenarios I'm thinking of, I recall several of them have said that they would ask them, but I thought you said you were going to Negril, but I noticed that, but instead you went to Ochi or something like that, right? And then the person kind of gives a reason, give some kind of reason that still don't sit well, right? Something don't seem right. And so I would say, you continue to ask those little questions, because those little questions can then give you, but be mindful of how you ask them, So you're going to the situation and you're going to be screaming and hollering like, no, just be very cool, try your best. Cool, calm, collected, and you ask your questions. You say, but I notice on this bill here that you have this amount here going to Jade Garden, right? What's that about? And then you hear what the person have to say, and then something else show up, and you hear it, and trust me, it will not all add up, right? So it's really patience and kind of biding your time and being able to manage your emotions, right? To regulate them to get to the answer. To get to the real answer, if the person is not going to be forthcoming, because that definitely can be a thing.
How do you deal with like a gaslighter? So I hate the term gaslighting, because I feel like gaslighting, toxic, and narcissist. If you talk to every girl will tell you that she dated a narcissist. I feel like that's an overused term for someone that was probably just not as interested in you. But gaslighting, I think I have had that issue where someone says something to you and you're like, yo. And it's kind of like they make it about you, or they say, no, I did not say that. You know what I mean? Like, how do you deal with that? Like, how do you deal with a gaslighter? So it's one thing to catch it, but how do you communicate? This is my last question. Though. Yeah, I know. Cause same. Cause we're at the end. Yeah. That was we're at the end. Yeah.
Yeah. So gaslighting definitely, that has become like I hear everybody with it, but the truth is that it is about yeah, that you making you feel like you are the person that's wrong, or that like, how could you come up with that? That don't make no sense. It's you, kind of thing. Definitely happens. And what was the frame of the question again? You wanted to know,
How
like,
would you deal? Like, how would you deal with a gaslighter? Like, if you're dealing with in a relationship with someone that's like
right,
that.
right. Yes. So I think that in that situation, when somebody's trying to gaslight you, that it's time to stop the train of that conversation, because then that conversation is supposed to now switch around the energy to focus on you, right?
Yeah.
Because you're the one that's crazy and building these things in your head. It's time to stop that conversation and be like, all right, okay, no problem. Right. Let me go and, think about this again. Right. And figure out, because how is it that you're going to approach this situation? And how is it that you're going to approach the situation in a way that this person doesn't feel like they have to kind of turn it around on you, you know? So that's not an easy thing to figure out, but it depends on who you're dealing with, right? And if you're truly, really, really dealing with a real, true narcissist, right? That's not something that you're gonna get away from. Usually, I don't. Usually, the gurus of narcissism, like that, meaning the psychologists who deal with narcissism a lot, and I don't know any here to speak of, but I do follow a lady that deals with narcissism a lot, and her recommendation is get out. If this is really truly a narcissist, you can't do anything to stop that to stop that. They would have to work on themselves in whatever, there's nothing you can do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morgan. How can people get in contact with you? How can people reach out to you? Like, what is your social media? Please share with us.
Yeah, sure. So it is at KADM Psych Associates, right? That's our IG handle. We're also on Facebook with the same handle. And then you can call us as well, or WhatsApp us at 869-7657. You'll get David, who is our premier office assistant, right? Who manages all things. So David can help you out, and you could email us as well, kadmoffice@gmail.com. I think that's everything.
All right, guys. So thank you so much for today's episode. Once again, you can check out Dr. Kai Henry Morgan on KD and Associates. I'll put all the information at the bottom. You can also log on to therapyja.com and get information, check out our resources. We have a link. Actually, I actually linked your practice on my website. So it's one of the resources. Yeah, so it's linked. So people can contact you on it as well. So thank you very much, guys, and hey, have a good day. See you next week.